Welcome to Whips in the Dungeon 101.22, Conditioning the Whip. Today we've got our toy bag and we're all packed up ready to go to the dungeon. And either before you go to the dungeon or the first thing once you get to the dungeon, one of the things I recommend that you do is you check your whips and make sure they're ready for dungeon play. So I always carry a tub of conditioner in my whip bag. Carry a clean cloth, so I have a little hand towel, and then I have the whips that I've brought that I'm going to play with. I generally will take a galley whip. So when you pull the whip out of the bag, check the plating, get a feel for it, feel if it feels dry. When you have a multi-tailed whip that you play with a lot on someone's back or butt, just the skin oil is going to help condition those tails. So I recommend conditioning a whip about once every 6 months or a couple times a year. If you play with it frequently and you're using those tails on human skin, it might not need to be conditioned that often for the tails, but the thong is probably going to need a little conditioner every 6 months or so. So I've got, a galley whip. I've got a cat. I play with this cat an awful lot. It's feeling pretty good today. I always take a snake whip or two, and then I'll take my favorite covey of bull whips to the dungeon, 3 or 4 bull whips. So when you pull the snake whip off, again, I'm gonna feel that thong, then I get down to the fall. The thong, condition about once every 6 months. I can personally condition my falls every time before I play with them. Some people say that conditioning a fall and then using it right away is going to make that fall tacky and a little sticky, and they don't like to do that. They like to condition it the day before they're going to play. Try it both ways. Condition it the day before you play, and then condition it right before you play, and see which you prefer. I condition mine right before I play. So, a couple decades ago, most falls were made out of red hide. It seems like red hide is a little more difficult for whip makers to find right now, so you don't find a lot of whip makers using red hide, but red hide was very durable. It held its conditioner very well and is a wonderful fall material. A lot of whip makers are using what's called whitehide. Whitehide is white by its nature, and this particular set of stock whips, the entire whip's made out of whitehide as well as the fall. I absolutely abhor whitehide. If you get my book, I go into great detail about why I don't like it. The main reason I don't like it is it doesn't hold conditioner. I can condition this fall and play with it for an hour, and it feels like it soaked up all the conditioner and it's as dry as it was before I started. So if I get a whip that has a whitehide fall, one of the first things I do with it is change the fall to either red hide or latigo. Some call that latigo. So I've got a little bull whip here. Again, I'm gonna check that whip. If the thong feels like it's well conditioned, then all I'm gonna do is condition the fall right before I play with it. Yeah, I almost feel like you can't put too much conditioner on a fall. If you're going to condition the thong, you want just a very light coat of conditioner, and that one little light coat that I started with is enough to drag it all the way down the length of the thong. So then we get to a signal whip, and I haven't conditioned this one in a while. So when I say a little light coat, I'm just putting just a little bit on my finger where my finger's just a little shiny, and then I'm starting that shine and I'm working it down, and maybe when I run out of it, I might get just a little bit more. So really the question on conditioner, somebody's gonna ask, well, what kind of conditioner do you use? Well, that's where the big kind of argument among the whip gurus is, and I'm gonna tell you both sides of the story. The Aussies and the New Zealanders swear by beeswax, a soft beeswax dressing. Beeswax is what I use, but anyone that knows what beeswax is going to tell you, well, beeswax is too hard to make a leather dressing out of, and there's actually other stuff in it. Well, there is, and most of the Aussies that make this stuff won't tell you their secret formula, but generally it will have some lanolin in it to soften the beeswax. Lanolin, or wool wax, is a wax that's secreted out of the sebaceous, or by the sebaceous glands of wool-bearing animals, and it's natural. So beeswax dressing is all natural. The other popular dressing, especially in the United States, is Picard's. I believe Picard's is made in Wisconsin or somewhere in the United States. And if you read the fine print on Picard's has a petroleum distillate in it. And some people are going to say that petroleum distillate is going to break down the leather. Well, I've been throwing for 20 years and I've used Picard's and beeswax dressing, and I've never had Picard's break down one of my whips or cause any problem with a whip. What I will say is, whether you use beeswax or Picard's, use a paste or a wax dressing. Don't use, if it's an oil dress conditioner or it's liquid, I'm going to say don't use it. So mostly I'm using this beeswax. If I don't have it around and all I have is Picard's, then I'll use Picard's. To me, either one is fine. That's not an argument worth really having. But that's both sides of that story. Today's keyword is cracker. That's the little piece that we replace on the end of the whip. We can also call that a popper. But cracker's today's keyword.